warning, change will not be easy. Premier Doug Ford's new progressive conservative government is signaling it will move quickly with dramatic reforms. In Thursday's speech from the throne, read in the legislature by Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell entitled, "A Government for the People," the new administration will convene a commission of inquiry into government spending practices. Premier Doug Ford applauds with other members of the Progressive Conservative caucus during the reading of the throne speech by Ontario's Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell on July 12, 2018. Richard Loughton's Toronto Star, the Tories will also free police from onerous restrictions that treat those in uniform as subjects of suspicion and scorn, and unaffordable green energy contracts, and expand beer and wine sales to convenience and big box stores. While the speech did not specifically mention the $6 billion in spending cuts that Ford promised during the spring election campaign, it heralded a new era of restraint. "We cannot afford to dither or delay. To overcome these challenges, we must challenge the status quo, reject the old compromises and embrace change," the 9-page throne speech said. The article continued below. "The road ahead will not be easy, but the path is clear. Have yours or read more. Ontario students will be taught the 1998 sex ed curriculum. Education Minister says opinion. Judith Timpson, rolling back sex education is not good for kids and education. The Ford government will replace the 2015 sex education curriculum with an age-appropriate one that is based on real consultation with parents." In a sop to the social conservatives who helped him become Tory leader in March, the new Premier's administration will use the 1998 sex education syllabus, which predates Google, same-sex marriage, and social media, until a new lesson plan is developed. Students will no longer be taught the failed experimental discovery math curricula, in favor of a focus on fundamentals. Article continued below. Leader Andrea Horwath said, "This throne speech takes us backwards, it takes us back to a previous century, and is a race to the bottom of what families should be able to count on their government for." Interim Liberal leader John Fraser said the impact of the government's decisions in our schools is of deep concern, but evangelist Charles McVitie, an invited guest at the speech, said students can now go and learn how to tie their shoelaces and do arithmetic and read and write, and do what they should be doing in school instead of learning things that belong, really, in postgraduate studies. Green leader Mike Schreiner countered that Ford has declared war on the modern world. "I mean, to have no climate change plan and to take our sex ed curriculum back to 1998 is taking the province backwards," said Schreiner. In contrast to recent speeches from the throne, there was no French spoken. Nor was there any acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. Although the income tax cuts Ford promised during the June 7 election will not take effect for at least 2 years, the speech promised meaningful, necessary tax relief to parents, small businesses, and the working poor. "You should not be forced to pay more and work harder to make life easier for your government. Instead, your government should be working harder, smarter, and more efficiently to make life better for you." The Tories will call a commission of inquiry into the financial practices of the government to identify ways to restore accountability and trust in Ontario's public finances. The previous Liberal government's spending practices were a major target of the Ford campaign, indicating the new government will embrace Auditor General Bonnie Lysyc's accounting, which would balloon this year's deficit to $11.7 billion from the $6.7 billion projected by the Liberals. The speech said the era of accounting tricks and sleight of hand must end. That suggests Finance Minister Vic Fedeli will not book as assets some $11 billion of government money in the co-sponsored Ontario Public Service Employees Union Pension Plan and the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. However, the Tories will charge ahead with expanding the Liberals' costly Fair Hydro plan that Lysyc has also criticized as bogus. In the 2016 speech from the throne, Wynn's government promised to reduce hydro rates by 25% by borrowing billions of dollars to amortize the costs of electricity system improvements over a longer period of time. Ford will build upon the Liberal plan to reduce rates an additional 12% by funneling to ratepayers the government's annual dividends from its share of Hydro One, which currently goes toward revenues. Your new government believes that no dollar is better spent than the dollar that is left in the pockets of the taxpayer. That is why your government will take action to reduce gas prices and lower your hydro bills. The throne speech touted the end of Ontario's cap-and-trade alliance with Quebec and California, which means $1.9 billion less flowing to the Treasury for environmental programs. These oppressive taxes make life unaffordable for families and put thousands of Ontario jobs at risk, it said. There was no mention of what, if anything, the new government plans to do to tackle greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change. However, the speech reiterated Ford's support for keeping open the Pickering nuclear generating station. On healthcare, the Tories have pledged 15,000 new long-term care beds over the next 5 years and $3.8 billion in mental health and addiction spending, including toward supportive housing. They will be increasing supports for families with autistic children, though no details were provided. There was a vague promise of partnering with Toronto and other GTA municipalities to build a world-class transit system, with the city experiencing a summer of gun violence. The Ford government, which has already postponed implementation of the Ontario Special Investigations Unit Act on improving police oversight, indicated a possible return to carting. You can count on your government to respect the men and women of Ontario's police services by freeing them from onerous restrictions that treat those in uniform as subjects of suspicion and scorn, the speech said, and ensuring they have the tools, support, and resources they need to enforce the law and protect innocent families from the menace of drug, gun, and gang-related violence that suggests a resumption of TAVIS, the controversial Toronto anti-violence intervention strategy that ran from 2006 until 2017, which had the highest rate of stopping black people to check their identification. Ford ended almost 15 years of Liberal rule in the June 7 election, toppling Wynne, who had been Premier since 2013. He hopes to expand upon her liberalization of beer and wine distribution to supermarkets by allowing sales at convenience stores and big-box retailers. But that could be costly because in 2015 Wynne's government signed a 10-year contract with the beer store, which is owned by the major breweries, to allow just 450 supermarkets to sell six-packs. Under the terms of that deal, there are financial penalties for any breach of the agreement. Robert Benzie is the Star's Queen's Park bureau chief and a reporter covering Ontario politics. Follow him on Twitter, @RobertBenzie. Rob Ferguson is a Toronto-based reporter covering Ontario politics. Follow him on Twitter, @RobFerguson1.